Hi, Dr. Rajiv. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks, Vivek.
Yeah. So, Dr. Rajiv, thank you so much for joining this chat today. Um, you have been a great support, a great pillar for the pharmaceutical drug manufacturing industry when it comes to quality and compliance. Uh, it's incredible to see how far the technology has come in the last 5 years. If I go back just even 5 years, we were still discussing cloud technology. We were looking at ways to utilize data better. But suddenly, in the last couple of years, the advancements in AI, they have opened up just brand new possibilities, brand new opportunities. However, given the complexities of the pharma world, we would like to, still figure out how AI can become more like a lens to bring a little bit of clarity into the how we can truly solve some of these complexities with respect to the pharmaceutical drug manufacturing industry. And this is where we are speaking with and this is why we have initiated Leucine lens. It's like applying a lens to bring clarity around the complexities of the pharma industries. And who knows is better than you? You have been a great pillar of strength for the past 3 decades. So thank you for your time today, and thank you for joining. I'm excited to have this chat with you today.
Thank you, Vivek. I think it's a great opportunity for me to interact with you. I've been seeing your, development and your transformation in this industry from your ID days, and it's so heartening to see that we have somebody like you who's really putting in a lot of efforts to bring in so many technologies within the industry. It's a requirement. As you mentioned that these new jargons, we hear it in all the industries, and we are also excited. As you know, pharma industry, especially the pharma industry that we are into in India, the generics world, we have to abide by the filings and the processes that we adopt right in the beginning of our filings and continue throughout the life of the product. So there's not much scope that the companies feel that should be included as we move on, because they feel that their filings would be affected or they may not be able to continue a product. And the most difficult part is they would not understand how this can be implemented for the betterment. Of course, there's a huge requirement in this industry. The space is very big, and as you rightly said, that there are so many opportunities over here, especially on getting the product in the consistent manner. We know that it's a very hard time to get a product developed and implement on a commercial basis. But when you commercialize this product, as you know, that there's always a scope of improvement and there's a scope of learning. The learning curve is very high. But even though we have learned a lot as we move on in the commercial space, those learnings are not getting implemented. And especially when the technology outside is getting improvised and getting better and better, the pharma industry has not really adapted, even though the regulatory agencies are giving that encouragement. That encouragement is not reflected in the way that the pharma industry works. But in the last couple of years' time, there has been a need that we have to look at these technologies in a big way. And as you know, pandemic has been one of the reason for many companies to look at how we can improvise our ways of working and how we can minimize the human intervention. Of course, human intervention is required for major decisions, but there are certain decisions which can be taken based on the data that we have. The data compiled in the pharma industry is very large, but if somebody were to look at this data on a manual basis, it's a humongous task. But if this data can be crunched in a meaningful manner in the shortest possible time, we'll be able to make a lot of progress in the way that we produce the products. And especially, the biggest problem in our industry is the failures that we encounter on a regular basis. And it's very difficult to identify why the product failed, even though there is so much of work which is done manually. And these manual interventions may or may not be getting recorded as part of the manufacturing process. So what is important is, can we get something called as a early warning system? Can we get something which we call as a out of trend, and we make some corrections during the process to ensure that the failures do not encounter. Getting a product out of the failure and trying to reprocess, as we call it, is not a good exercise. But if you can tweak in a process as it happens, and if we have a process which can be ensured that the final product goes through well with the kind of data that we have, I think it's a big requirement. And I don't think that this will cannot work, because we have seen that many in other industries are using this technology in a big way. Pharma industry has been behind because there is a bit of apprehension whether that technology will work, whether it will be accepted. Most important thing is the fear of not getting accepted by the regulatory agencies. But if we have the right people in the right place to convince and get the things done, we should be able to get that. And as I always see that when I look at some of the recent technologies that I have implemented, I think the youngsters who are working in the pharma industry do have that kind of vision, that kind of conviction, that they are ready to take up that kind of project where they would like to see more and more technologies being used rather than using the conventional way of recording manually on paper with pen. Vivek.
Right. Yeah, no, great insights, Dr. Rajiv. One question that comes to my mind, you, and I think we have seen for a while now that compliance with the FDA regulations has been a strong urgency driver when it comes to the adoption of the technology. Before we dive deeper into the role of technology and specifically AI, I often have observed and heard from experts like yourself that the compliance issues which are found in FDA warning letters, 483s, even recalls, they sound and feel quite similar and almost exactly the same year after year. So if we open up a random warning letter from probably 5 years ago, and if we open something which came out just last month, you'll probably see a lot of similarities in the way different kind of issues were identified, some things which might not have been addressed as much as they might have been. So there is a lot of similarity, and it almost feels like we are repeating the same things over and over, just across multiple companies and sometimes even within the same companies. So according to you, why do we see um, a trend where we keep on seeing same things again and again when it comes to the FDA compliance actions?
Vivek, this is a very good question that you asked. See, when the inspection happens, maybe a couple of years back, the expectation is that you make a corrective action on the point that has been raised. And many times the corrective actions are taken locally or only on a limited area of the observation which is found. And the expectation is that the corrective action should be global in nature, or at least holistic. So when you look at certain corrective actions, you find that the company would have taken the corrections at the place which happened, and did not look at the other areas where the potential risk would have been also identified or was not identified. I mean, the inspection is something that they will not go into each and every year to find, but it's a company's responsibility to ensure that they take a holistic view of the observation and correct it. You're right that the observations made by at the same company at different locations or different companies, even though it's in the public domain, these observations, you'll find them repeated again and again, because they haven't. They would have said that, okay, if they find something in the warehouse, you correct in warehouse, but you should also look at if the similar observation has any kind of link to a manufacturing, to a QC, to other areas. So people are not looking at that. So the observations remain same, but the difference is that the companies are not taken care in as a holistic requirement of the observation, and that's where the observations keep on repeating even now. And most important is that we haven't changed the way the technology or the processes are run. So the expectation is that If they say that you found some observation, you correct it. So what happens is you are still continuing the same process, same methodology, same technology, but you have not given any kind of thought that okay, if my observation is such that it might be human error, but can I make a difference in the system where the human error or the transcription errors or the personal mistakes which are happening can be minimized by technology. And that's where the companies are fearing that why should we invest in technology or why should we bring in when the observations are made, and we'll try to correct the same thing by putting in some more SOPs, some checklists, some some registers or some logbooks. So these are things that come up, and they become more and more burdensome for the people working. And we are not bringing in technology which otherwise would have been a much simpler and a better way of making compliance. And then see what happens is the investigators, I would not blame them, they have a list of all the observations which are made earlier, and they just have to go through the observation again, and as a checklist find if these are there, and it's very easy for them to pick up those observations again and say that okay, this is what we found. And many times the same company at the same premises, they come up with the repeat observation and same observation again. The reason is it's a localized response that has been given in the past.
Yeah, no, I think that absolutely makes a lot of sense, Dr. Rajiv. In fact, at Leucine, we do analyze FDA compliance warning letters in a great deal of detail. So we analyze at the level of different use cases, let's say investigations versus cleaning versus process validation, just different buckets of issues that we often observe. Interestingly, we also analyzed at the inspector level, and just we just wanted to see if the FDA inspectors are giving similar observations when they are going from place A to place B. And we saw some correlation. We saw that the FDA inspectors, there was some similarity in the language, in the topics that they picked up. So there seems to be some pattern. I wouldn't say bias, but some pattern that's definitely which definitely has emerged when it comes to the compliance actions.
Yeah. One thing, Vivek, you should remember
Yeah.
that when US FDA gives a 483 observation, there's certain set of drop down menus that they have to choose. Say, for example, there are some very standard wordings that they are there in the drop down menu. That's why you feel that the observation, the title of the observation remains same. But when it comes to the typical example, that example might give more details about what exactly. So the first few lines might be same because they have a possibility to pick up those templates from the drop down menu and select that okay, this is the one. It helps them because they can bucket in those observations in a better manner rather than everybody coming out with a different language to explain that particular observation. So sometimes it may not be exactly the same observation that would have been there, but they have tried to standardize the way the 483 is written in the top, and then the 483 that is written picked up from their own template from the drop down menu. They have to give an example, and that example would very closely connect to that observation that is made. So if you're looking at only the first few lines, you might see that it's the same observation made, but it's a template that the FDA uses.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and thank you for sharing those insights, Dr. Rajiv. Just one last question on this topic of the problem statement that we are discussing. So often, quality is seen as a burden on productivity in the manufacturing plant. So if we take an example of an OEE value, overall equipment effectiveness value of any typical manufacturing industry, let's say steel, automotive, mining, versus if we go into pharmaceutical drug manufacturing or even medical devices, to that extent, there's a huge gap between what's the utilization at a typical manufacturing plant versus what the utilization is at a pharmaceutical manufacturing site. And hence the gap, which can be, as much as 25%, according to some reports that I think we have all seen from McKinsey and BCG. It is often attributed to something called compliance burden or quality burden. So, what's your take on that before we move forward?
I would not say it's a compliance burden. What happens is in the pharma industry, in order to make better utilization, it's always said that you should have a multi-purpose plant, which means that you have a similar equipment and you can switch over from one product to other product in a campaign basis. And that's typical of API or a formulation. Now, what happens is that you can have multiple product equipment for a manufacturing, but not all the process would require equipment which would be there as part of the set or a equipment train, as we call it. So, if you have a product A and it requires a granulation, I'm talking about formulation. It requires a pelletization. It requires a coating. It requires some sort of equipment for drying or typical equipment for tablet filling or capsule filling. So when you switch over, not necessarily that the next product will require all the equipment that have been used in the earlier process. So when you look at the downtime, when you look at the equipment utilization, there might be some differences, and you'll say, oh, it's used only for 20% of the time. But that 20% of the time which is used, you do not have exactly the same methodology of manufacturing. So that could be one reason. Secondly, the other area of, as you say, it's not a compliance burden. What is important is that when you switch over from one product to other, there's a need to clean the equipment to the extent that it doesn't bring in that contamination of the earlier process. Now, that kind of cleanliness, that kind of a cleaning procedure would take a couple of days' time. Now, in the process, your equipment is not used, but it's a requirement that your process, your equipment should be so clean that they don't bring in the contamination of the earlier process, even though the product may be same. And typically, the cleanliness level is as you know, is not more than 10 ppm. Now, to achieve this, obviously they will have to dismantle the equipment, reassemble the equipment, clean the equipment with certain solvents or some cleaning agents, um, box up the equipment again and make sure that it works in the right manner. So all that would take. So there would be some people saying, "Oh, you're trying to create hurdles for not making the efficient." But the point is that if any kind of contamination happens in the next product, I think there's a potential recall, even though the contamination per se may not be harmful. But your own procedure would say that I will ensure that the cleanliness is to the extent of 10 ppm. So those are things that are there, and there are certain equipment which may not be utilized to that extent, and the typical overall equipment efficiency definitely can be a concern in such cases.
Yeah, and it's great to hear these insights specifically from an outsider point of view, uh, because it brings a certain sense of relief that the drugs that we are consuming on a day-to-day basis, there is a sense of carefulness which goes into manufacturing. You wouldn't want to ship drugs which are contaminated. It directly affects the patient safety. So from that point of view, it's really good to hear these thoughts. And pharmaceutical industry does have to adhere to the strictest possible regulatory standards. But in my opinion, and as you rightly pointed out, it's rightfully so. At the end of the day, it's going to have a direct impact on the quality
Patients.
of life of millions of patients who are consuming these drugs. So, thank you for sharing those insights. So, moving over to the next section of our chat today, the role of AI in pharma. Let me ask you straight: do you think AI in pharma is a buzzword?
It's a buzzword. It is a requirement. I would say bring in those technologies as fast as possible. What happens is when we discuss in several forums, I also take a lot of sessions about the automation and technology advancements. I think many of the speakers talk about the AI, ML kind of thing. It's nice to hear from them. But what happens is within the audience, there are companies who are small, medium size. They get scared, saying that, oh, these things are very easy for the big companies to invest because they have the pockets are deep, so they can always invest. But I would say that bring in technologies which can have a very smooth transition from the existing process and does not see any technology that comes in. You can't straight away go into AI and ML from the existing ones. But you should identify within your own processes what can be automated. I mean, when you talk about AI, ML, these are good words too. But is there a easier way of handling things? As I said, crunching the data based on the historical information that you have is something that you should be doing. And as we know that any company has to prepare an annual product review. Now that annual product review is not for the sake of just because the FDA is asking, but are you using it for your benefit of your process improvisation on a year basis? I would say the answer is no. The reason is, um, it's become like a ritual for companies to prepare their annual product review and just keep it ready because the FDA would ask them. And of course, it's the information which is there. But how effectively are you using this information for your improvisation? And this is something, if that gets automated, I think we are coming very close to what's called as AI. And instead of talking about AI, let us say that why don't you look at how can you crunch the data? How can you look at, as I said earlier, the early warning systems? Like if there is something which is about to fail or something is going to go wrong, can we stop the process and make sure that, oh, let's hold on the process, something is going wrong, the raw material is not good, your utilizer is not working well. So instead of waiting for the failure and then, oh my God, what happens now? It's better to get this idea and stop it. I think we do have certain things coming up in the instrumentation also, analytical instruments, where they are looking at if there is something which may be slightly deviating from the regular process. There's some kind of alarm. Now, the alarm is not based on the data that is collected, but based on what has happened in the past and how it can affect your process if this process were to go through. And then break your heads on the wall to find out what went wrong, which is very difficult to find. And the biggest challenge is that the current process of recording the information does not bring in the right information about the failure. So it's very important for us that just by talking about these two, three big jargons, let the companies know that what can be done in a transition. Okay, a couple of years back, we were talking about paperless laboratory, paperless manufacturing. I mean, people said, okay, we are on paper, so what can we do? But did anybody say that instead of when you have a paper-based technology, you say, did somebody say it is first look at less paper and then paperless? No, nobody said less paper. He said, okay, you are doing whatever is there on hard copy documentation, and straight away talking about paperless. Now, what do you do in between? Is there a way that you have a transition? That kind of thing was not there. So people continued to work in the same manner, generated huge amount of documentation, and the document is scattered around the company, but it is not available in the place where it can be crunched in the proper manner. So had somebody said at that time, instead of paperless, let us talk about less paper, so that you are getting ready for the next future of paperless. So this is something that I think the technology companies like you should look at. How can you support the pharma companies to implement incremental changes in the process through some sort of automation, and then combined with that, then it becomes a collective effort of a AI or a ML, as you call it. So we are happy that these things are available. People get scared. Oh, will that mean that you'll be pushing out the people out from the company? No, it's not like that. I mean, we need people who understand the technology. We need people who can. Why should we make people work in a very manual and a mundane way in the regular places where they have not got a chance to see what can be done in a very, very simplified manner? And AI and ML is not about complicated things, it's making things simple. So look at and also try to convince the companies about how things can be made simple, how things can be made fast, how things can be made more judgmental, and the decisions can be made. I mean, let the people spend time in more quality decision rather than making time in identifying things and rummaging through the documents. If I say that, okay, I need the data for the last 3 years, the people go and look at the archives and, okay, let's pull out the document and start searching on paper. I mean, those days have gone. So I think the AI starts from that point, and look at those kind of steps which can be taken, or convince the companies about it. And I think that's where it helps, because companies may not be able to spend a huge amount of investment right on a day one, saying that, oh, I want to change into a totally automated process. No, we want to change into certain steps, and those steps are important. So if you strategically go and tell that, okay, this particular big multinational company has AI and ML, the companies are not getting convinced about these technologies, because they say we don't have that kind of bandwidth to handle such things. That's what my feeling is.
Yeah, and you mentioned, quite critical insights, which has been my observation as well for the past couple of years. So, we started looking at pharma industry in multiple segments, but by and large, let's say there are two unique segments. There are large multi-site, multi-product, multinational pharma companies, and on the other hand, there are small to medium size pharma companies who specialize in one area or the other, who are focused on, let's say, one modality, one geography, one specific disease type. Now, in the first category, I do see that the adoption of AI and ML is not bad. In fact, it's probably as much as any other advanced industry today. There are large in-house teams, there are specifically funded projects, there are clearly defined objectives and outcomes that people would like to achieve. So, so that's that. However, then it leaves the 80% of the pharma industry, which has made its way by specializing on some areas in the market. And, for them, I think they are now getting up to the speed with the whole digitization story. They may not have all the advanced systems, such as getting data from machines into a central historian server, uh, putting in some kind of analytics layer on top. So they still are missing some of those critical elements, and even sometimes the execution systems where uh, things like process parameters are being recorded on paper. So, for the second bucket of pharma industry, which is still catching up to the speed. Uh, and Dr. Rajiv, you have been a global quality leader at multiple pharma industry companies yourself. What would your advice be for the quality leaders in the pharma companies who are just getting started with or thinking about AI? What goals would you give them for 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year?
I can say that currently the quality heads and the quality departments are completely focusing on making sure the sites are getting through the inspections if they are into regulated markets. So that's the primary focus. But beyond that, I think they should also support the company, whether it's the R&D or the manufacturing, quality control, to ensure that the new things that are being brought into the system should get implemented in a very, very systematic manner. What I see is that there's always chance that they say everything there for them. There's a no. There's a negative aspect saying that no, this cannot be done. I mean, they should also try to understand that the companies need to survive based on the efficiency that they manage in every area that they work. And it's not necessary that everything that you do is a shortcut. So they look at the scientific reasoning, look at the process that they have adopted. They should give encouragement to the other departments who are into process changes, technology upgradations, and try to convince them about the needs of the regulatory agencies, about the expectations from the changes that they're looking at, and not just restrict to the existing process. And it's not necessary that they should say no to everything. they should also be able to upgrade their knowledge and understanding of the technologies that are coming up. The R&D should also look at new technologies which are coming up. They should not be saying that, oh, I'm used to only conventional chromatography and spectroscopy technologies of analysis and manufacturing processes. There are new processes which are coming up, and they should be really open to accept. And many times, uh, when I see that when these technologies are available, the biggest hurdle is that the quality assurance team at the site are not able to accept these technologies, and then they get sidelined or they just remain on the back burner. And this is something that I would say that yes, the primary focus is compliance, but at the same times, you can always bring in transition in your existing processes, bring in automation, bring in simplification, which can help you. And I think people like you who are trying to support the companies in a big way in technology, in bringing kind of automation in the system, I think you should also be able to convince them about the acceptability. And most important is that how these things have really changed the way things have been done from the past and the present, and how they can be simplified in the future for the products that are manufactured. Because the competition is very high, and to meet up with the competition, you have to be absolutely efficient in terms of your process, minimize wastage, reduce errors, reduce failures, and that is the buzzword that we have to ensure. Vivek.
Yeah. And Dr. Rajiv, we are coming to the last few minutes of our chat today. So I just want to, and this is for our listeners as well, that, when we were just about to start Leucine, I was trying to reach out to some experts in the industry, and not many people were helpful. But I do remember that I think it was my first or second visit, and I had met Dr. Rajiv in his office when he was working at a very large pharmaceutical drug manufacturing company. And we just had a candid chat on what are the current challenges in the pharmaceutical space, how a company or an upcoming company like Leucine should try to think about the problems and the solutions, and how it can design its solution space in an effective manner. I think a lot has changed since then. The role of AI has increased a lot. The technology adoption has become quite a bit. And as you mentioned, the younger generation of people working within pharma sites, they are actually a lot more excited about technology and AI than, let's say, we had seen from the previous generation. So there has been quite a bit of evolution in the past few years, I would say. So if I was coming to you again, Dr. Rajiv, asking for advice, or any younger company who is just looking to get started, who is trying to understand the pharma space, what are the areas which you would recommend, which would be most exciting to solve now? Something that makes a lot of sense for investment of time and money and energy in the next few years.
So I think you're right that there's a huge amount of requirement, and you may not get that much of audience from the senior people saying they would not know what needs to be done. But yes, the pain areas in the industry are there. One is on documentation, on how can you reduce the manual transcriptions errors. Okay, and for that you should be looking at how best we can do it. As you know, in the pharma industry, you're not allowed electronic equipment unless they are flame-proof. So can we bring in some kind of a technology which can really work in places where you're not allowed to carry electronic equipment for recordings? So that's something that is quite essential. Try to look at processes which can be automated, the manual interventions of the people, and getting the real-time information for the operators uh, at the shop floor in the laboratories will definitely help them in a big way. And as you know that we are also trying to tell the equipment companies, the instrument companies, to bring in some kind of automation in their equipment also. And I'm working very closely with some of them. um, as you know, the spectroscopy and chromatography, which is the first line of analysis, will continue. I think that basic technology will not change. But what will change is the way that the analysis is done. The samples are drawn, the samples are prepared, because there's a need to prepare a sample, there's a need to record what has been done in the right manner. And there's a huge amount of you should be able to understand that in a laboratory or the in the manufacturing area, some of the activities will continue manual, but how can you ensure that whatever is done manually is checked, corrected, and stopped if there is any mistake at that time, by bringing in some kind of electronic interventions. I would not know what would be the right word for that, so that people do not make mistakes, rather than they making a mistake but not able to find what was the mistake made. Can we do something on those kind? I mean, the best part that has happened is now we are using very extensively the barcodes and the QR codes in the plants, in the laboratories. I mean, this is one small way to ensure that your pieces of equipment, the accessories that are used, are the right ones. I can give an example that a very simple way of using the QR code was that if you are supposed to use a volumetric glass of say 100 ml, and by mistake you use a 250 ml, every time you show the QR code of that particular glassware piece, to a sensor, to a electronic system, and it will acknowledge it. Yes, it's correct. By mistake, you use it, it'll say, stop, you're not using the right one. Rather than in the conventional way, somebody made a mistake, he used the wrong glassware and made a mistake, got a wrong result. And then we find, oh, he might have used, and oh, you find that, oh, instead of 100 ml, he used 250 ml. So the intervention of technology at the right place should be done, and these are steps that will be definitely helpful. And I'm sure when I talk about these technologies with people like you'll be able to get a lot of ideas about how to do that. But most important is, let your people also visit the place, try to understand, walk with the people who are working in the plant, in the laboratory, and see how they're doing the things. Maybe it's like saying that they would not know what they want. Okay, but once you look at the processes that are followed, you will be able to see, oh, this is the area that I can automate. Oh, this is the area that I can always come up with some technology which can help them. So the people working in a conventional manner, they would not know what the technology can bring in. But people like yourself who can understand and look at some futuristic things about, oh, if he's doing the things this way, I can automate, because I see that it's the same thing repeated again and again, or there's a possibility of mistake. Look at the mistakes that are made, look at the deviations that are being recorded in the laboratory. Why are they recorded? Why are the mistakes happening? So can we do something to minimize them? And if you can come out with some ways of handling, I think AI, ML will always be there. I mean, these are top jargons which are there, but let us take those steps to ensure that we build up these technologies in a bits and pieces, and then as a collective effort becomes AI or ML. I mean, that's what there's a huge amount of scope in that. The chemistry will not change. We might look at, you might have some difference in the formulations, the way the drugs are administered to the patients. That can change. But that's again, there's a huge amount of technology that will come up, and that's a different space. But if you want to bring in technology in the existing conventional manufacturing, then you have to really walk through with the people, try to understand their work. Maybe, as I said, they may not be able to tell you what they want. They not be able to tell you, oh, this is what I'm doing, but I don't know what things you can bring in, what can change. But you should also be lucky enough to find somebody within those organizations that, yes, if you bring in technology, how does that affect or does not affect their filings, their compliance level, and their convincing ability to the regulatory agencies when they come for inspections. Vivek.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation today. Thank you for sharing all the wonderful insights. And I do agree, we need a lot more innovation in pharma. We need a lot of newer technologies. We need maybe a few more companies to truly expand the scope of technology uses in pharma. So I think I was quite lucky to get in touch with you, know you, take advice from you. If there are more people who want to reach out to you for advice, so where can they find you?
Oh, I'm available, as you know. Uh, I'm based in Mumbai, so my email, you have it, you have my number. So definitely, I can be reached and whatnot at this period of my career. I'm definitely there to help, and it's going to be a pleasure for me to really take. And I was really happy when you came a couple of years back to me, and I did see a spark in you, Vivek, at that time. And when you showed me your technology at that time on my computer on Amazon Cloud, I was really convinced that yes, here is a person who can really make wonders. And happy that you made a lot of insight into these technologies. And happy to see your growth. Happy to see your ability to get collaborated with some of the big companies, and also now your technologies are being used by several companies in India and abroad, and this is something I really appreciate. And hats off to you, your team, and your people working around you and with you. You have done a wonderful job, and I would definitely expect that many more youngsters like yourself should come in this field, and the sky's the limit. And if you can, not only me, but there are so many people who I can make you get in touch, who would like to give a lot of ideas and pick up those ideas, try to germinate those ideas. And I think if you can really flourish these ideas with some good technologies to start with, I think in India there are companies who are ready to invest. The only thing is you should find the right people to get convinced and get these technologies in place. I mean, you'll always be asked the question, who has done it in the past? Maybe you might not find people to take up the technology in the first place, or they may not be the ones. They may feel that there's a scapegoats. But yes, if your technology is really truly convincing, I think people will be able to accept it, and there's a huge scope for this, Vivek.
Yeah, no, there is a good amount of hunger which I typically see. So, Dr. Rajiv, thank you so much. Thank you for being a guidance to the industry. Thank you for showing all of us the path forward, and wish you best of luck for the next phase of your journey. I'm hoping you achieve the goals that you are setting for yourself, and keep on advising and guiding companies like us. Thank you.
All the best, Vivek, and happy to see your progress as well. Thank you.